Most historians, when we think about defining the parameters of our study, bounding the time frame, the short answer is you have to bind it somehow. You have to put a time frame in on your study, or else it just becomes too difficult to do. And so the post-war period, how I defined it, was from 1945 to 1960. And the reasons, a good historian will justify why they have bound their study in that way. And for me, it was in 1945, you see the end of the Second World War. You see social, political, and economic changes happening in a way that they haven't happened in the past. So something new is happening in that 1945 period. And to put a cap on that time frame was 1960. And that seemed reasonable to me because you see the trends that were, the dominant trends that were happening in that post-war period begin to change in 1960. Things were happening to create a new atmosphere, a new culture from 1960 and perhaps up to maybe 1975. So the gender and gender anxieties that were really emerging, intensifying, beginning in 1945, changed in 1960. So it was that time period where this intensification of around gender, gender identities, gender relations made me think that was a reasonable time frame to work within. Why I chose Ontario compared to maybe broadening out to talk about Canada was largely determined because it would be unreasonable as an historian to think that we can talk in any kind of sophisticated way really about sort of a national idea of boyhood, because regions and jurisdictions are very different. What happens in northern British Columbia, for example, is somewhat different than happens on the East Coast. What happens on the East Coast will be different than, say, what happens in the production of boyhood, say, in northern Ontario. The discourses will be shaped a little bit differently. It's not to say there wouldn't be some similarities, but the differences between and among regions and jurisdictions would be just too much to talk in any kind of sophisticated way or to research. And so you had to limit, I had to limit what I was able to do. And so the archival material that I went to was enormous enough just to handle in Ontario. How did I go about collecting the data? What archival materials did I look at, and how did I go about choosing them? Again, as I mentioned, newspapers were my primary source. It's what I built my argument from. The reason being that they were widely read within post-war Ontario. And so that was where I started from. The second primary sources, archival material that I looked at, were popular periodicals. The reason for that was popular periodicals like Maclean's magazine and like Chatelaine magazine were also widely read by adults during that time period. And then from there I selected texts that were less widely read but still accessible to many adults, and that included looking at popular psychologists and other people who were providing advice to adults on how to raise appropriate children. That was a key source because at that time post-war psychology really became prominent, became something that adults, both in the general population but also professionals like teachers, look to in a way they haven't looked to in the past in order to guide their thinking about raising children. And so my primary reasons to look at that material was, what did people read during the post-war period? How did I make selections within my archival material? One advantage I think I had at that time compared to maybe historians in the past was the access to online archives. That was a tremendous help. I used archival material accessible in libraries, microfiche, for example, to access newspapers, but newspapers have also been put online. So I used keywords such as boys, boyhood, children, manhood, masculinity, and so forth. And if you punch those in as keyword searches, it produced an enormous amount of archival material, thousands and thousands of documents, an overabundance of material really that I had access to. How did I process that material? Again, I looked for those keywords, but I also looked for other words that were coded as gendered. For example, juvenile delinquency, which there was a significant concern in the post-war period about children going bad. And when commentators, public commentators or psychologists or social scientists talked about juvenile delinquency, they were really talking about boys. So even if an historian just looked at, words, keywords of boys or boyhood, they would have missed something if they didn't understand the way in which language it was codified in gendered masculine. And so juvenile delinquency was a word that when they used it, they really meant boys for the most part. When public commentators and others used the word child, for example, or children, that was really coded as boys or boyhood. That was particularly important to be attentive to because it alerted me and others to the fact that concerns, public awareness around issues was largely generated for boys. So if you think about systems of oppression, systems of power and how they function within public discourse, the concern has always really been about boys and not necessarily about girls, and that's something that is new. How do I know a language is coded? How do I know it's gendered? Is a good question. In part, I had to rely on secondary sources. So when I think about my own study, I look at what other historians have marked and said about the codification and the gendering of languages in that post-war period. But I think also if you scrutinize policy documents, if you scrutinize legal documents, if you scrutinize social science or medical language during that period, they slip in and out of using children and boys in a way that it's not hard to come to the conclusion that the concern was really about boys. Most of the social science, for example, produced during that time period, especially around juvenile delinquency, the studies were always about boys. So oftentimes, if you look at the sample, they would use children, for example, in the introductions, but the study itself only interviewed boys, or they only examined the lives of boys. So you begin to see that the conflation between children and boys was clearly there, between the word juvenile delinquent and boys was there. They were interchangeable.